Welcome to the UCM Interface Bible Study Podcast. Isa itong Bible Study podcast by Pinoys for Pinoys. Just friends around the table, conversational lang, na inductive, aka expository style. Hindi kami experts, most of us are young professionals, but we do our best to study context and let scripture speak for itself. We go book by book, but we also have special study topics once in a while. But before we start, salamat, thanks for joining us, and kung trip nyo itong ginagawa namin, please subscribe.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello. Okay, andito ako, si Gooch.
I'm Rainier.
I'm Ben.
And we welcome you. So, we are now going to discuss Esther
Chapter 4.
chapter 4. But before that, let's see what happened previously on Esther. First, there was a new character being introduced who is Haman, the Agagite. This would probably be like the antagonist of the story.
Yeah.
Diba?
And he's called the Agagite because he's identified as the enemy of the Jews.
Yeah, he may not necessarily be
A descendant of
descendant.
King Agag during the time of Saul.
Right.
But the point is, isa siyang kaaway, tunay na kaaway ng mga Hudyo.
And then Mordecai didn't want to kneel down or pay him honor. And so totally pissed off Haman. Nung chinismis siya ng royal officials, nalaman ni Haman na Jew pala tong si Mordecai. Galit si
Kasi
Haman
nga,
sa Jews.
Galit nga talaga si Haman.
Na bad trip siya. Hindi lang siya masaya na mamatay si Mordecai. Gusto rin niya patayin lahat ng mga tao. Lahat ng Jews.
Dinamay na. Damay na to.
Damay-damay na. Tapos, ang ginawa niya, he approached Xerxes, told him about a certain people dispersed among the peoples in your province who have different customs and do not obey the king's laws, supposedly. Don't tolerate them, let's kill them all. He also gave Xerxes, parang binadgetan niya tong decision sana, with 10,000 talents. Xerxes gives him the signet ring, which is basically an e-signature. And then...
So gives the authority to Haman to do whatever he wants to do.
Yes, to do anything he wants. He does the edict and releases the edict around
All the provinces.
all the couriers, all the provinces, all the languages to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, women and children on a single day. And the Jews found out about this right on the night of the Passover.
Right. It's very ironic because we understand that the Passover celebration is a commemoration of their redemption from slavery in Egypt.
Right.
Tapos biglang haharapin nila kamatayan na naman pala.
Paano sila makakapag-celebrate ng Passover when on the night before they find out na, oh no, we're all gonna die.
Right.
And the scene ends with King Xerxes and Haman sitting down to drink. Then the city of Susa was bewildered. Okay, and then now we are on chapter 4. Esther 4. When Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. But he went only as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. In every province to which the edict and order of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. When Esther's eunuchs and female attendants came and told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him to put on instead of his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther summoned Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs assigned to attend her, and ordered him to find out what was troubling Mordecai and why. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict for their annihilation, which had been published in Susa, to show to Esther and explain it to her, and he told him to instruct her to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Hathach went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, "All the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law: that they be put to death unless the king extends the gold scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king." When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer: "Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape.
For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows, but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this." Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai: "Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." So Mordecai went away and carried out all of Esther's instructions.
Rainier, ano yung big chunks?
Hahatiin natin to sa tatlong parte, no? Yung verses 1 to 5, we will look at the response of Mordecai.
Response of Mordecai.
Verses 6 to 17, this is where Mordecai takes action. And then the final scene is, but it's also part of 6 to 17. Ito na yung response ni Esther dun sa call ni Mordecai.
So 3 big chunks.
Yes, yes.
First is Mordecai's response. Second is
Mordecai taking action.
Mordecai taking action. And third
And
is...
Esther responding to the call.
Okay. And let's jump into it.
Okay, may tanong muna ako sa inyong dalawa.
All right.
You know, we have certain realities in our lives and sometimes we just take them for granted. We never actually ask. For example, why was I born into my family? Why not another family? Halimbawa, ako napaka-average ng family ko. Bakit hindi ako pinanganak sa isang mayamang pamilya kaya? And why were you born in this specific period in the history of the world or the Philippines, our country? Why do you have the talents and privileges that you have? Is there any rhyme or reason to these realities in your life? Ewan ko na pag-iisipan nyo to. Baka medyo philosophical
lalim.
masyado.
I've asked myself that oftentimes. I don't think I've ever actually arrived to a concrete answer, but I see na bits and pieces like okay, I've gone through financial trouble myself personally,
Yeah.
but because of my father and his affluence, I never got all the way dirt poor. So parang may
sumambot.
magkup pa rin ako. I mean, I never got to that. And then when it comes to family naman, I mean, because of the challenges that I had to go through with my own family, I encounter friends or people who went through similar and I could relate to them and somehow I'm able to help them process and cope with theirs.
Right.
Yeah.
But as a whole, it's just slowly unraveling.
Yeah.
Pero hindi mo
bit by bit.
naintindihan ito agad-agad, no?
No, it took a while. And I'm 35. I'm only seeing these like past 5 years.
Yeah. Wala akong like definite answer, you know? I mean, what came into my head in relation to this question was, what if I was born in like medieval times? Yung mga ganun kasi may fascination ako for like knights and adventure. Yung mga ganun, di ba? I wonder if I would have fit better. And that's me being like the fantasy escapist guy that I am. You know? And the illustration in my head, it's like souls were like balls and then parang naka-conveyor belt yung mga souls. And then mine was like a medieval soul that was like, it got dropped somewhere and then...
The wrong time period.
Tapos parang, ba't naiwan to dito? Anong time na ba? It's 1980s na. Pasok mo na dyan. It's a few centuries late. Habol na lang natin. There's a medieval soul in this modern man.
Okay. Yeah, but sometimes tama ka, Ben. Minsan hindi natin naiintindihan yung the realities that we have in our lives. Sometimes we just take them for granted. But when you start asking the question, makakatulong ma-appreciate mo kung ano yung buhay mo, kung anong direction ng buhay mo. Well, I've asked these questions kasi may punto tayo mamaya.
Yun, no?
Okay. Abangan kung ano yung punto na yan. But for now, we're going to do verses 1 to 5. Ano bang nangyari dito sa verses 1 to 5 na to? Una, in verse 1, ano yung nalaman na ni Mordecai?
He found out about the edict and then dahil doon, yung response niya was...
Ano yung naging response ni Mordecai?
He tore his clothes off, put sackcloth and ashes, and then went out into the city wailing.
Okay, tandaan natin ulit. Dito sa Book of Esther, God was never mentioned.
Right.
But this is another religious gesture, or maybe, how would you say this? A religious custom that's mentioned in this book. Even the Passover wasn't even mentioned.
Yeah, actually, it's
Diba?
yeah.
Hindi na mention yun. We're only able to identify that the edict was announced the night before the celebration of the Passover because we are familiar with the date of the celebration of the Passover.
Right.
Ang galing ng writer. He did not mention that at all. But if you're keen and you're familiar with the date, then you would wait a minute.
Yeah.
Ito yung araw na i-celebrate the Passover. At dito naman, look at this gesture of Mordecai.
Putting sackcloth, ashes, wailing.
Saan nyo ba nakikita to?
Prophets.
Prophets. O tuwing kailan? Parang ano yung...
Well, when
bakit
they're
sa prophet?
lamenting over sin and
Ayan.
whatever.
Yeah.
When they did something bad and God's about to punish them.
Okay, so kailangan mag-fast. Put on sackcloth. Ganyan.
Oh, Israel! Yung mga ganun.
Oh,
Yeah.
Tama-tama yung sinabi mo because your reference is the prophets.
Right.
Basahin ko tong Joel 2:12-14. Even now declares the Lord, return to me with all your heart, with fasting and weeping and mourning. Rend your heart and not your garments. Rend to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and abounding in love, and he relents from sending calamity. Who knows? He may turn and relent and leave behind a blessing, grain offerings and drink offerings for the Lord your God. So ibig sabihin, they fast, but it's really not just a physical act of fasting, but it really is a heart attitude.
Right.
Diba? And what do they want? Why are they fasting and mourning?
Do you want compassion from God?
They are asking God for intervention, for God to help them.
Right.
Nakakagulat that in a book where God is not even mentioned, ito yung ginawa ni Mordecai. What do you think is the author hinting at?
Two things in my perspective. One is, I think it's pointing at admitting depravity, admitting helplessness. And second, they also know that the only one who can actually fix their problem is God.
Okay. Biro mo yun, ha? Not even mentioning God, no mention of Yahweh, but in the response of Mordecai, we know that he is...
Calling out to God.
Yan. Ang galing, ano? This means that they are very helpless. Mordecai is expressing that to God. I am very helpless. Your people here in Susa, we are all helpless. Tulungan mo kami.
Nice.
Okay. Tuloy natin yung kwento. May nag-post sa Facebook.
Hala.
May picture pa ni Mordecai. Ganyan. Naka-upload. Nung nag-check ng Facebook si Esther, it appeared on her newsfeed. Nakita niya, ano nangyayari kay Mordecai? Di ba? Ano ngayon ang ginawa ni Esther to alleviate the grief of Mordecai?
Didn't she try to send clothes to Mordecai
Okay.
to comfort him?
Oo, kasi, nga naman, kailangan padalhan ko ng
Uniqlo.
hindi lang, mga signature clothes ito. Kasi Reyna na siya.
Queen siya, di ba?
Uniqlo would be very
Gucci
middle
siguro.
class.
Grabe,
Ano ka? Ba't ka mag-Uniqlo? Versace, yan. Pinadala niya si Mordecai. But was Mordecai or was his grief alleviated?
No. He refused the acts of comfort.
Yeah, that was verse
Bakit
4.
naman? Why?
The gravity of the situation demands that it cannot be alleviated by small trivial acts.
By stuff.
By stuff, yeah. Di ba?
Ewan ko how do you guys respond to bad news? Siguro iba-ibang levels ng bad news yan. Pero ano bang level ng bad news na to para kay Mordecai?
It's like the death of his people.
It really is.
It is. Yeah, it is nga
death of
pala.
his
Diba? It's death of his people. So parang, ba't mo binibigyan ng damit for what, diba? I'm tearing my clothes off kasi I'm asking God na ngayon out of sheer desperation. Can't you understand what this actually means?
Yeah, I think it's almost like yung ino-offer was something like, sige, kumain ka na lang.
Oo.
Mag-eat all you can ka.
Masama ba naman yung masama ba yung ino-offer ni Esther? Is that bad?
No, but it doesn't address.
It does not help.
It does not help.
Pero kasi gano'n naman tayo, di ba? May nakita tayong kaibigan natin just grieving. Right away, we want to console the person. Stop crying.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Ewan ko kung nakaranas na kayong matinding grief. But sometimes, you just want yourself to be given that space to grieve.
Yeah. I understand that.
Ikaw ba, Ben, have you felt that?
Yeah, I felt that. And when people try to comfort me, parang, well, I wasn't brash, but parang I'll just ignore them. I'll just continue my grieving. Kasi
Yeah.
parang it has to be processed eh.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think Mordecai, through his fasting, mourning, putting ashes on his head, I guess that's one way of dealing with grief and processing it.
also, from what I see from the text, is not just he needs the time and space to grieve, but also that he knows that all these little anesthetics will not help
Yeah.
the actual problem,
Yeah.
which is inevitable, death.
Right.
Yes.
So what he's really asking God for is a concrete solution. Lord, protect us. Please don't let this happen. Parang ganun.
Yeah.
Of course, we're not told. That's not specifically written in the account. But it seems like parang ganun yung direction na
Yeah,
pinupuntahan ng grief ni Mordecai. Now, let's move on. Verses 6 to 17. Pero gagawin nating 2 parts ng 6 to 17 na yan. Siyempre, hindi naman na-alleviate yung grief ni Mordecai. So ngayon, anong ginawa? Kasi nalaman ni Esther, hindi pa rin siya nahihimasmasan.
Hindi mahatak ni Hathak.
Hindi.
Oh my
Okay.
I did not see that coming.
Okay. Yikes. Dahil doon, andun siya sa open square. Can you imagine it's even a public place? Ibang klase to. Yung iba magkukulong sa kwarto, di ba? So pinuntahan siya ni Hatak in front of the king's gate kasi bawal nga naman sa loob. Ibig sabihin, at this point, hindi alam ni Esther kung ano yung pinagmamaktol ni Mordecai.
Hindi pa alam ni
Hindi
Esther.
pa alam
Hindi pa
ni
niya
Esther.
gets kung
Kaya
what's
nga,
up.
ito yung mga, para yung mga kaibigan natin are just in a rush to help us and just stop the grieving.
Yeah, that's right.
Hindi pa naiintindihan kung ano yung pinagluluksa ko.
I actually wonder as well. Kasi you used the analogy of Facebook a while ago na parang nakita sa newsfeed. But I wonder about the information that Esther is actually getting from the outside world, outside the palace. Kasi she didn't know about the edict.
So hindi rin niya alam kung ano yung bakit nagluluksa si Mordecai. Esther didn't even bother to ask, but her immediate response, this is more like a knee-jerk response.
Yeah, it is.
Band-aid solutions.
Yeah.
So ngayon palang malalaman ni Esther kung ano yung dahilan. Anong sinabi ni Mordecai? Ano yung nireport niya?
Mordecai told to Hathach all that had happened to him and the exact sum of money that Haman had promised to pay into the king's treasury for the destruction of the Jews.
Ganun ka-detailed. Pati kung magkanong pera yung inoffer ni Haman.
Yes.
And in verse 8,
He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict for their annihilation, which had been published in Susa to show to Esther and explain it to her.
so ngayon palang malalaman ni Esther kung ano talaga yung dahilan. Sabi ni Mordecai, merong PDF attachment dyan. Andyan yung edict. Sabi mo kay Esther, basahin niya kung ano nakalagay dyan. It seems that Esther was just clueless.
Yeah, she is. Must be a harem thing. Kasi parang wala naman siyang official job or
function.
cabinet function. Like, wala. She's just...
No, wala naman siya talaga mga duties na gano'n. Hindi naman
Yeah.
siya involved sa political affairs. It seems like, and nakakataka dito, you're the queen. Ikaw pa yung nahuli sa balita.
Oo nga.
Okay.
Sorry, just a side question lang, which doesn't really need to be answered. But I actually wonder about ano yung responsibilities of a queen around this time. We
Parang
talked
pang PR siya,
Oh,
diba?
pang PR. Pero how exactly?
How exactly is a PR?
Anyway, it doesn't have to be answered. We don't have that much research on it.
I don't know the answer to that. But the point here in the story is she just didn't know what was going on outside of her own quarters. So, binigyan ng kopya. But he also gave instructions. Ano yung instructions na to? Sinabi dun sa verse 8 din.
He instructed her to go into the king's presence and beg for mercy and plead with him for her people.
In other words, ano ang nakita agad ni Mordecai na solution?
You are in a position
you're
to do
in position.
something.
You're the queen.
You are the queen, and therefore you are in the right position to go to the king and beg.
Yes.
Okay, pero ito kaya ay madaling request? What do you think was the major obstacle Esther had to hurdle para magawa niya yung request ni Mordecai?
On a normal kingdom, the queen is buddy-buddies naman with the king, diba? They're supposed to
Okay.
be very close. But here, yeah, it's very different.
Okay, babasahin ko to, yung verse 11. All the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death unless the king extends the gold scepter to them and spares their lives. Hanggang dun muna tayo. Ano yung sabihin nito?
Well, kung hindi ka imbitado, deads ka.
Hindi ka pwedeng basta sumugod na lang.
Oo.
You have to be summoned. So even the queen
Even the queen.
had to be summoned. Otherwise, pag dumiretso ka dun sa royal quarters, pwede kang
Patayin.
patayin. Unless
He extends the golden scepter.
that would spare your life. So this is a very risky mission.
Si Xerxes, moody pa naman tong si Xerxes.
Moody pa naman siya. Ibig sabihin, the instruction of Mordecai is not easy. Even if she's already the queen, hindi pa rin kaya.
Right.
There's a risk. At ano ang risk?
Well, kamatayan lang naman.
Kamatayan lang naman. Di ba?
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Now, let me read the ending of verse 11. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king.
It may mean that baka meron silang LQ.
Pwedeng hindi naman LQ, agad.
Or may
Ikaw
ibang
naman kasi
favorite.
LQ, agad-agad eh.
Or baka may ibang favorite ngayon
But
si...
remember, this is 5 years into the marriage.
Medyo nagsawa na.
Ibig sabihin, the desire has cooled. Oh, probably, most likely. Kasi if you are really so excited for your wife, you want her to be with you all the time. Pero ang tagal nito, isang buwan to ha.
Right.
So ibig sabihin, most likely, the desire has waned or subsided. Kaya lalo nang mas mahirap. It's even now doubly difficult to go to the king and beg for mercy. Ngayon, pinadala yung sinabi ni Esther kay Mordecai.
This would be verse
12 and 13. So, syempre, pinaabot kay Mordecai. But what did Mordecai say?
Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape.
And then verse 14.
If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish.
Okay, dyan muna. Was Mordecai implying a covert threat to Esther's life? Even in verse 13, sabi niya, huwag kang kakasiguro na dahil reyna ka, you will be spared.
I think it's more of Mordecai spelling out the reality.
Okay.
Na the decree is absolute na all the Jews. And you cannot hide your identity that well because people know, like they found out that Mordecai is a Jew and they will connect her easily.
Right.
It could also be speaking about your palace, your comforts. Those are not going to save you in the end.
Okay. Pero, kahit ganun yung katapang yung sinabi niya, he still seems to be very sure that salvation will happen. Bakit kaya? Bakit ganito yung sinabi ni Mordecai? For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. Where did that confidence come from?
It's interesting though. He never had that confidence before.
Oo nga.
Diba? He never had that confidence
Hindi.
before. He told Esther, be quiet about your family background
But
and your
this
race.
only happened after the fasting, the weeping, wailing. What does that do?
I mean, with the wailing and the fasting, it reminds them of who God was in their ordeal out of Egypt.
In their history.
Diba?
Bumalik ito.
Oo nga.
Ngayon, ito yung tanong. Have you ever fasted?
Yes.
Have you
Yeah.
ever tried fasting?
Yeah.
Bakit kayo nag-fast at anong naging epekto nito sa inyo?
Basically, I fasted with the whole church. It's a corporate fast. Yeah, it was a time to empty, kind of get rid of all the distractions.
Yes.
Food, and in my case, also technology, media, and to hear, removing all the static, basically. And also, yun nga, parang to bring forth a request and to see what his answer is going to be, or something like that.
Yeah, mine's similar. Initially, I went into fasting thinking that it's all about requests and asking and asking.
Right.
Okay.
But after, as I went through the actual fast, I find that it's more of now I'm in a more intimate space with God because
Yeah.
all the distractions are gone.
Tinanggal mo.
Right.
Oo.
And now, instead of asking stuff, parang, can you answer my questions?
Yeah,
It becomes God giving me instructions as to what He wants. And even to the point wherein, those questions you ask, ay, wala lang yan. Why do you even bother?
Right.
Actually, to ride on that, kasi in the beginning, I thought it was all like request,
Yeah,
diba? And then there was one particular year that I was asking God for answers to my prayers. But what happened was in the middle of the fast, all I got was correction. As in, the Lord
Yeah,
revealing
exactly.
bad stuff inside of me.
Okay.
Na, I'm like, I'm asking for this, and I got, parang napagsabihan pa ako about
Okay.
what I thought was completely unrelated to what I was actually asking for.
Great.
Pero apparently, in the long run, it was actually connected. That the flesh that I was struggling with was hindering me from that.
At kung matatandaan nyo, when Jesus was tempted by
Satan in the wilderness.
in the wilderness, this happened after Jesus fasted for 40 days. He was physically very weak, but spiritually very, very strong. So he was able to resist the temptations.
Yeah.
So something really happens when we fast. And I
Yeah.
think we see here the impact of that fasting, of the spiritual discipline kay Mordecai.
That is very interesting.
Yeah,
Diba? Nagkaroon na siya ng
That's right.
ganung klaseng confidence. Hindi to, this is not something that he just formulated. I believe this is the result of his fasting. We definitely have to connect to God,
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
especially in times of crisis or tragedy. Ngayon, dito na tayo sa huling parte.
Yeah, this would be the latter part of 14 all the way to 17.
In this closing section of the story in chapter 4, parang may ginamit na closing bracket. Kasi if you recall, this story started with Mordecai.
Ashes and sackcloth. Yeah, tearing out his clothes, which is actually also part of fasting, I suppose.
Pero tingnan niyo yung verse 15 and verse 16. Ito na yung reply ni Esther kay Mordecai.
Go gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or
Wow.
drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though this is against the law. If I perish, I perish.
Sino pang dinamay niya doon sa fasting na to, sabi ni Esther?
Pati yung mga attendance
Pati
niya.
attendance, kami, magpa-fast kami. At kayo,
Mag-fast din kayo.
sabayan niyo din kami. Look at that. There's a parenthetical device. Fasting, fasting. Ano ibig sabihin nito?
In the same way that Mordecai had a remembrance, the character of God, baka ito rin, now it's time for the people to have a remembrance of who God is.
So ngayon, parang si Mordecai tumakbo sa Diyos. And then Esther suddenly realized, I also need to go to God. Pero may trigger yan. Ang trigger dyan ay yung last part ng verse 14. Let's just go back to that. This is more like a rhetorical question of Mordecai to Esther.
Mordecai says, and who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this.
It was only when she was challenged to think about her identity, her role, maybe her role in God's plan of redemption for the people of the Jews, that she began to realize that, wait, I need to go to God. Why is that important? Tingnan niyo yung confidence niya. And if I perish, I perish.
Nag-YOLO.
How do you see that connection? Knowing who you are, your purpose, and then, now I need to go to God.
If I perish, I perish. Parang sinabi niya, buhay ko nasa kamay na ng Diyos.
Okay.
At the same time, I think it's also, now that I know who I am in God, I realize that my life is actually not just for myself.
Exactly.
You see, that's a clear message in this chapter. I don't just live for myself. If you know that you are living for God, then you are really living for other people as well. Kanina, yung opening natin, tinanong ko kayo if you're aware of, if you ever wondered about the realities of your life. Ang tanong ko naman ngayon, now as you witness the circumstances in your life, as they slowly unfold, what do you see as God's design and purpose for you?
Okay, I don't exactly have a solid answer for that. This is my purpose. This is my destiny. But I do know, what I believe is that once a person gives his or her life to Christ, surely one of the changes is that you'll realize that your life is not your own anymore. And everything that you have is for other people, it's not for you. So you have a job. How does this play into serving people, to loving God through serving people? My money now is not for me. My marriage now is not for me. Me being a dad is not just for me. So now, as Christ had displayed, and sinabi niya, diba, the Gentiles lord it over others, but I show you I'm the king who came to serve. And now because I want to be like the king, the only way to do that is to expend of myself through all the things that the Lord has given me. As to what that shape is, I don't know exactly a solid answer for that, but I can sort of thread the several talents and opportunities that I have to see that, okay, I can have a picture that this is where I'm supposed to be. kind of makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense.
What about you, Ben?
For me, it's actually it's something that's slowly being more clear to me, I guess. Without going to exact details, I had a fairly rough history in the past, siguro mga 2008 to 2013. It was a very bad time for me. Depression, etc. I had to undergo medication, family problems, and so on and so forth. And even after I got out of it, I've always asked God na parang, what was the use of all that? I mean, I got out of it, but I still carry with me the memories that are painful. But then slowly in the past year or so, because I'm fairly open about where I came from and what happened to me. You know, people would come up to me on a personal capacity and they would ask me questions. And it starts off from there, one person, two person. And then slowly but surely, I see na parang, I don't know why, but people feel comfortable to open up to me. And so for now, parang, I'm not saying God put the pain so that I would comfort these people, but in such a way that God didn't allow my pain to be wasted.
Okay.
I did not see that coming. Like, what purpose was all that pain? For me, is that God refused to have those pain be worth for nothing and be just pain in vain. But now He uses that for the sake of others. And for me, what I take away from that is when I see people's lives improve. Because now I see them face to face. I'm on the front row seat as to see how their lives improve. And that is, I mean, I can't even start to describe the feeling when I see that happen, when I see God's hand actually happen. Yeah, I mean.
One of my mentors has this line. He says that from your deepest wound is your greatest ministry.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Ako naman, I think discovering my purpose began many years ago. 1984, July 21. May mga dinosaurs pa ng mga panahon yun. Yeah, I would go to school riding my Brontosaurus. So I was a college student. July 21, 1984 was the day I made a commitment to follow Jesus, to submit my life to His Lordship. And that started this very exciting journey. And that's when the Lord slowly unfolded His plan for my life and how He's going to use me to build His kingdom. And now, andito na ako, matanda na ako, ang nakita kong role ko talaga ngayon is to really empower the young adults for ministry, to serve them. And when I say ministry, I don't mean I want the young adults to follow me and be like me in full-time ministry. No, but to empower them where they are at. If you're a business person, that is your ministry.
Yeah.
Exercise your priesthood as a businessman. If you're a voice artist, ikaw Gutch,
Yeah.
that is where you exercise your ministry as a royal priest of the Lord Jesus Christ. God is calling all Christians to be in the ministry of reconciliation, reconciling all things to Christ. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And ibabato ko na rin to sa ating listeners, yung verse 14. And who knows, but that you have come to your position for such a time as this. See you on chapter 5.